What's going on, y'all? Let's get this squared away. All right. Okay. We're gonna wait for some more people to come in before we get started. Man, oh man. Let's hope the Wi-Fi stays okay. Wi-Fi is gonna be a little spotty, it seems. So let's hope that there's no issues there. But how y'all feeling? Send some thoughts in the comments before we get started. Robbie, what's going on, man? Try to tell him, yes, sir. Gabe, what's going on? Jonathan, I think there's a chance. I mean, I feel a lot better about it now than I did. You ever just like not know what to say? It's kind of like where I'm at right now. But yeah, we're gonna navigate this the best that we can. But I've been telling you all that I wanted the post game recap shows to be more more spontaneous, and it's been a little bit since we've had a live one. So let's go, man. Let's see. All right, we'll get started here in about another minute. Be sure to drop some thoughts in the chat. I'll mention some of them. Be sure to ask any questions you have. Should be about 30 minutes tonight. Nothing too overall, or nothing too long overall. And like I said, my Wi-Fi has been really weird right now. So in the event that it does drop out, I'm just going to turn the Wi-Fi back on and off. Should take about 5 seconds, and we'll get back into the stream. So if it goes off, just reset your webpage. So all right, y'all, let's get it going. All right, make sure I got the ad reads, and we are good. All right, 3, 2, and 1. For the first time in program history, the Louisville football team has defeated the Clemson Tigers.
You are Locked On Louisville, your daily podcast on the Louisville Cardinals. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Card Nation, what is going on? Welcome into this live episode of the Locked On post-game recap episode of the Locked On Louisville podcast. Sorry, I just completely butchered that. The emotions are high. As always, I'm your host, Dalton Pence. This is my 5th year covering the university, 3rd year hosting this show, and I want to take this time to thank you all for making us your first listen of the day. Even though we are recording this very late at night, it is definitely appreciated that you make us your first listen each and every day. Now, guys, today's episode of the show is brought to you by FanDuel. New customers can place a $5 bet, and you'll get started with $150 in bonus bets if you win your first $5 bet. All you have to do, visit FanDuel.com to get started. For the first time in program history, the Louisville Cardinals victorious over the Clemson Tigers 33-21. It was a nerve-wracking game, but Louisville stepped up in all 3 phases on the field. They played their most complete game in quite some time, definitely their most complete game this season, and there is a lot of credit to hand out throughout the duration of this episode. Was this the spark that the team and program needed? So stop me if you've heard this before, but well, actually we never have. That's what's wild to me, is it would be different if Louisville was beating Clemson for the first time, having played almost 10 times. But the difference is how we've lost these games. I mean, 2014, James Quick gets caught up by the goal line. We have 4 plays to get it in the end zone. We don't do it. 2016. You know what happened in 2016. I really don't even have to tell you. I don't even want to relive that at the moment. You had 2020, I think it was 2021, where you had 1st and goal. Malik Cunningham had gotten hurt. You have 1st and goal at about the 5-yard line to be able to punch it in to win the game. 4 plays you don't get in. The moral of the story is beating Clemson has been this team's kryptonite since joining the conference. And a lot of credit to that is Clemson. Now, I see some comments already popping up about my thoughts on Clemson heading into this game. I think it's safe to say, I'll admit it, I was wrong. And we'll dive into that here in just a second. And the Wi-Fi is already starting to go out, unfortunately. But stay with me if it hopefully keeps up. But overall, this victory, I feel like, was a culmination of all 3 phases coming together and putting forth a really, really good performance. I mean, you look at all sides. Now, there were some situations where offensively we left some points on the board, right? We sure did. But you also answered the bell when your number was called. I mean, shout out to Tyler Shough for once again proving that he has the NFL talent. What about Isaac Brown? Phenomenal. Absolutely phenomenal. Defense, we have been very, very critical of Ron English. Not only on this show, but the whole fan base. As we should be. I mean, the performance of this team through the first, 7 games of the season defensively was not up to par with the talent that was on this defense. And guess what? You saw the talent on defense put on display. And as much as you can criticize Ron English, you now have to give him praise because he schemed up one hell of a game plan. While we're talking about the defense, I don't know if you all saw, but Ben Perry posted on his Instagram, basically LFG, let's effing go. Hopefully everything was good with all of his scans. It's my understanding that he got sent to the trauma center in Greensville, South Carolina, which is about 40-something minutes or miles away from Clemson Stadium. Hopefully we're not talking about a serious injury there. It was weird when he went down because, you didn't really see the forceful contact. It's like he got up from almost like falling over a defender or an offensive player, and then he went right back down to the ground. And I was originally thinking maybe concussion-like symptoms. Maybe he got a stinger, in the shoulder that affects like the spinal nerves. But ultimately, I don't want to speculate. We don't know exactly what is going on. But nonetheless, we hope for a speedy and full recovery. And hopefully, he's going to be just fine. And, you can draw some encouragement from his comments. But back to the point at hand, I felt like this was going to be the most challenging game of the season heading into this weekend. And I admitted that I thought, and this isn't a new thought, like it wasn't just me trying to hype up the matchup. Like for the past month or so, I have been very vocal that I thought Clemson was the best team in the conference. That I thought even though their lack of strength of schedule was there, I still felt like they were clicking on all cylinders. They were firing on all cylinders. Cade Klubnik looked really good. Maybe I overestimated the level of competition. And if you're a Miami fan listening to this, and believe me, there is a group of Miami fans that for some reason just can't let the Louisville fan base go. They played Louisville, 2 weeks ago? And for some reason, they are still worried about what a Louisville podcast host has to say rather than their team being undefeated at the moment. So let me just be the first to say, and there will be people like, well, your apology didn't seem so sincere. If I have to write it out, I will. Miami is the best team in the conference. Plain and simple. And like I said, I was wrong. It is what it is. But one thing that I felt like I learned tonight, or I didn't learn tonight, it was reaffirmed to me. This Louisville team's good. There's a lot of talent on this team, right? A lot of talent. Both sides of the football. That's what has made the subpar start that much more frustrating. You all know it. That's why we've been so upset, is because you look at this team, you look at the talent on the team, and we're thinking there's no way in hell this team should have 3 losses. Like, why does it take up into, what is this, the 9th game on the schedule? Why does it take 9 games to finally realize the potential. Nonetheless, you found it. And that's the main thing, is that, yeah, maybe the playoffs are out the window, but you're still playing for a ton of pride. You're playing for, a spark that can carry over into the offseason. You're playing for recruiting. You best believe that players were put on watch here. Oh, wow. Louisville gave Clemson the first home night loss since 2013. Say what you want about Clemson. It's not easy to win at Memorial Stadium. It's harder to win there at night, and there was a lot of people there. So Devon Campbell mentions, man, that's Louisville for you. Literally, you could post that as the title of this episode, and that's kind of where you get back to is, man, that is Louisville for you. So we're going to break down this performance a little bit more. Let's look to the defensive side of the ball. Let's look at the special teams, because that's where the majority of the plays were made. Now, don't take this as disrespect against the offense, but you have to tip your hat to Ron English and company, special teams for blocking 2 field goals, Brock Travelstead for hitting 3 field goals. Overall, it was a really, really good night in both aspects of the game. Be sure to drop a comment or a question in the YouTube section below. When we come back, we'll talk about what went right for the Cardinals defense coming up on the next segment of this live edition of the Locked On Louisville podcast. Card Nation, while we're having this much fun, let's talk about all the fun we could also be having at FanDuel. Right now, new customers can bet $5 and get $150 in bonus bets if you win. The FanDuel Sportsbook app gives you everything you need to place live bets on the NFL all in one place. When you get a hunch in the middle of the game, you can check out the latest stats, view live play-by-play, and so much more. If you were like me, you saw Louisville plus 10.5 on FanDuel, and I thought to myself, yeah, I'm going to throw them in the parlay. Unfortunately, the parlay sold in dramatic fashion, but at least Louisville covered in the spread, and thankfully they got the victory. Look at all of the great NFL odds on FanDuel.com to join today. Once again, you'll get started with $150 in bonus bets if that first $5 bet wins. Never waste a hunch and make every moment more with FanDuel, an official sportsbook partner of the NFL. Card Nation, it really just hasn't sunk in yet. But thank you all for tuning into this very, very impromptu live episode of the Locked On Louisville podcast. And thanks for your continued support as we go through the football season. Trying to read and catch up on some comments before we talk about the defense and the special teams. Looks like we got some Clemson fans in here. GG's. Best of luck moving forward. I've been saying Clemson wasn't good and they would lose to one of you guys they had coming up. Just glad it was you guys so people realize we're playing good teams. I mean, like I said, maybe I overinflated the Clemson balloon a little bit. And like I said, that's my fault. But make no mistake, if it was that easy to go into Memorial Stadium on a Saturday night and win, more teams will be doing it. So don't let that take away from the sparkle of this win. Let's see. This is the Louisville team we expected all year. Great win. Braum is a great play caller. He surprised me last year. Like I said, I think some of that was due to quarterback play, but we'll talk about the quarterback play in the final segment of the show coming up. But the defense, man. Give a round of applause for Ron English because he deserves it. I thought to myself, Louisville started out really good for the first 2 drives. They forced 2 very quick punts. And I'm thinking to myself, when they went down to score that touchdown drive, oh, damn. You enter the GTA meme. Here we go again. But that didn't happen. Louisville continually made adjustments. And then they made more adjustments. They were aggressive at the line of scrimmage. Yeah, Phil Maffa, you look at the final carry here. I mean, he had 30 for 171 and 2 touchdowns, but it didn't feel like he really got going until the Cardinals had that lead in the second half. And I guess for whatever reason, shout out to Dabo Swinney for having a tempo that was like it was like Clemson was up 19, the way they were playing, the way they were taking their time, the way They were letting the play clock go down, and it just didn't seem like it was a priority to try to win this game. I was sitting there thinking, why is he not going more in a hurry-up fashion? But I'm like, oh, all right. Oh, well. But you saw some big-time performances across the board. I know that you look at the yardage. Clemson had 450 yards of total offense. But compare that to what it was like to start the fourth quarter. The Cardinals were on defense the majority of that last quarter. And let's call it how it is. They were playing play not to lose, and you're up 19 in the fourth quarter, and that's how you would expect a coaching staff to treat this. And they were fine with keeping everything in front of them. One thing that I was impressed with is that really Louisville didn't give up many big plays. I'm trying to go back and think of the big plays that they gave up, and I would venture into saying that maybe less than 5. So ultimately, that you give credit to the Louisville defense is that one of the main things was limit the big plays. That's been one of the Achilles heels of this defense. They give up too many blown coverage plays. I didn't see much with blown coverage. Now, Clemson really didn't try to go downfield that much. Maybe that was more of a question as to whether or not the pass pro could hold up. Louisville was getting after Cade Klubnik, or maybe it was confidence that Klubnik couldn't throw it, that deep accurately. Because I know that Clemson has a really talented bunch of receivers, but it's a young group. And this is the best team that they played since Georgia week 1. Very, very bad, game for them there. But tackling, that was okay. That was pretty good. Not giving up big plays, that was pretty good. And then, honestly, we talk about that last Clemson touchdown. Maybe you all saw something different. Maybe you all saw something different than I did. I don't think that Klubnik got the first down or Phil Maffa got the first down on 4th down. Like, I'm sitting there thinking, I'm like, yeah, they said forward progress, but I'm sitting there looking past the first down marker on TV. I'm like, yeah, maybe the yellow line doesn't necessarily indicate the first down, but I'm like, it doesn't really look like a first down to me. So I thought Louisville should have got the ball back there. But at that point, credit to Louisville for making the plays. This was the most complete performance of the year. It seemed like early on they were going to defeat themselves again. The penalties in the first half, all of the snap infractions, the ineligible man downfield, false starts. You could see Jeff Brom mouth on the sideline in the first quarter asking if Tyler Shough could hear him, and Shough shook his head. And credit to the atmosphere that they went in and played with. But defensively, they stood up. It was much better than the 450 yards of total offense that they gave up. There weren't many defensive penalties. I know that they got a delay of game, which has been called more and more, but clean in coverage. Shout out to the secondary. Let me tell you something. Quincy Riley, this was a legacy type game for him. And you know that it meant more. He's from that area. His family is, I believe the majority of his family is Clemson fans. It was a place that he wanted to go, but he got hurt in high school, and I don't know the full story. I'm just really going off what his mom was saying on a Twitter post that I saw. But it felt like, there was a level of, thoughts of, for lack of better terms, for being sort of spurned by Clemson. This was a legacy game. To be able to go on the road, close to home, with a bunch of your family there and put forth a fantastic performance. Quincy Riley was phenomenal in coverage. It's to the point to where, like, you throw one-on-one against Quincy, it's like, why are you doing that? But he wasn't the only one. Tay Holloway made some big plays. Corey Thornton, D'Angelo Hutchinson, the entire secondary did what they needed to do. The linebacking core did what they needed to do. The interior defensive line, the edge rushers, they all handle business. And that's what I keep coming back to. Cade Klubnik had 12 carries for 43 yards. By far the best that Louisville has defended the mobile quarterback all season. You tip your hat to TJ Quinn, tip your hat to Stanquan Clark and Antonio Watts. It felt like just throughout. Jordan Girard, key plays, had the sack and then the pass batted down to force the punt. Ashton Gelati, once again, disrupting in the backfield. Great defensively. And then special teams. Special teams was something that we've talked about all year. There's been a lot of criticism of Brock Travelstead. He hasn't really had the greatest year, right? He didn't have a great year last year. He missed the first field goal today. But to his credit, he stepped up and made 4 big-time field goals after that. And for that, you tip your hat. He was 4 of 5 field goals, 3 of 3 on extra points. He had some big-time kicks, 3 outside of 40 yards. Again, you have to give credit where credit is due. I thought it was wild when Louisville blocked 1 kick against Georgia Tech. They're like, nah, man, watch this. 2 blocked kicks. And those blocked kicks completely shifted momentum because you're talking about getting Clemson within another possession of scoring, of getting closer and closer to that deficit. So it's huge. You wiped 6 points off the board in a game that went back and forth, that Louisville wasn't really able to get touchdowns in the second half until Isaac Brown's touchdown. It was huge. So having 2 blocked kicks, making 4 field goals, 3 outside of 40 yards or more, in a hostile environment on a Saturday night. I wish I was wearing a hat. Truthfully, I don't like to wear hats, but I'll tip that hat. Fantastic. Defense, phenomenal. Great game plan, great execution. Special teams. Started out a little rough, right? You had the block in the back, which really felt like you didn't even need to because Brooks already had the defender beat. And then you had the missed field goal. That was it. Overall, they didn't really do much to hurt themselves in either of those 2 phases. Offensively, it was sort of up and down. You did what you needed to do to get points on the board, which I said that Louisville was probably going to have to score over 30 points to win this game. They did. But in the second half, when they needed it the most. Now, stop me if you've heard this before. Isaac Brown, breakaway touchdown run. We'll discuss more on the offensive performance in the final segment of this live episode of Locked On Louisville when we come back. Cardinal fans, this episode is being recorded at 11:35 at night. Before this, I had to take a 5-hour energy. I was just completely drained. This game took a lot out of me mentally and physically. I said, screw it. Daylight savings time, or we're adding an hour of sleep. I'm going to go ahead and take that 5-hour energy and get myself in the zone. Our friends over at 5-Hour Energy know that being a passionate football fan isn't just a hobby, it's a way of life, which is why they've created the Stand the Fan 5-Hour Energy shot with a special flavor called Fan Fuel. This week's Fan Fuel was first win over the Clemson Tigers in program history. 5-Hour Energy knows that no matter what team you root for, being a fan requires heart, soul, and a whole lot of energy. Whether you're prepping for the big tailgate or ironing your jersey, your game day to-do list is always a mile long. That's why the limited edition Stand the Fan 5-Hour Energy shot is here to keep you fueled throughout the season. What's your fan fuel this week? Whatever it is, do it with a 5-Hour Energy. Available on 5hourenergy.com. Shipped nationwide. Already into the final segment of this live edition of the Locked On Louisville postgame podcast. Be sure to drop your thoughts in the comments below. Drop any questions you have. Let's get it live in the comments, y'all. We're out here celebrating the first victory over Clemson in program history, 33-21. Louisville now bowl eligible, 6-3 overall, 4-2 in conference play. They scored 33 points, which, if you would have asked me coming into the week, was that going to be enough to win the game? I would have said, I don't know, man. But shout out to the defense and also shout out to the offense. Like, yeah, there were some times where, like, the execution, there was a couple of costly drops. I know Amari Huggins-Bruce had a drop in that third quarter that would have potentially been a touchdown, but thankfully Louisville's defense was able to hold pat. There were some situations where in the first half, some snap infraction penalties, false starts, ineligible man downfield, that hurt Louisville's field position. And overall, at times, the running game wasn't able to get going in the first half. But the Cardinals stuck with it. Jeff Brom, I feel like, had a great game plan. I feel like he called a really good game. Tyler Shough was 17 of 32, 156, no touchdowns to no interceptions. It's probably his least statistically impressive performance of the year. The one thing that he did was he kept the offense at bay. Sometimes you need a game manager. Sometimes you do. Now, you shouldn't always have to resort on a quarterback just being a game manager, because Shough has won a couple games with his arm, but he was able to extend drives when he needed to. He made a couple of plays. Now, yeah, there were some throws to where he overthrew the receiver and stuff like that. It wasn't a perfect performance, but it wasn't a bad performance. And that's one of the talking points coming into the week was like, Louisville cannot defeat themselves if they want to defeat the Clemson Tigers. So Shough really didn't have all that bad of a game. Ja'Cory Brooks, bad game for his standards, 4 for 42. He led the Cardinals in receptions, or tied them in receptions, and he had the leader in receiving yards, had a couple of big catches. Mark Redmond, 4 for 36. Chris Bell, 3 for 35, had a really solid catch on a third down. Duke Watson, 1 for 31. Amari Huggins-Bruce, 1 for 13. Kataris Hicks, 1 for 0. And Isaac Brown, 3 for -1. But it was the rushing attack for the Cardinals that was able to do what they needed to win the game. And it starts with Isaac Brown. This guy is incredible. I went from, okay, I think he's the most talented running back on the team in August, and he might get some games where he can make an impact, to September thinking, oh, he's way ahead of schedule. He could end up being a rotational player, to this guy's got to get 15 carries a game minimum. He was fantastic. I feel like this is the best defense that he's gone up against all year. Maybe Notre Dame, but I feel like Clemson's defense is pretty good as well. Now, they had some injuries, but 20 carries for 151 yards and a touchdown. He is slowly but surely getting to Lamar Jackson's freshman rushing record. Slowly getting there, and I think he's definitely going to get there. And the main question now is he going to be the next in a long line of 1,000-yard rushers for the Cardinals? Isaac Brown not only showing that speed off, but I saw a comparison that I thought was pretty interesting. I think he's faster than this player, but Bucky Irving played for Oregon, one of the best running backs in the country in college, now is the starting running back for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers as a rookie. His vision and his ability to stop on a dime and cut up field and just find those small gaps that you don't see running backs go through. We're starting to see Isaac Brown go from really good freshman to absolute superstar. This guy, I mean, he's doing it every week now. You go from, okay, maybe freshman All-American, to this guy might be one of the best running backs in the ACC. At this point, name 3 other running backs in the conference that are running better than Isaac Brown. You can't. You 100% cannot. And he's doing it on insane efficiency. He averaged 7.6 yards per carry. Chris Bell had that end around, 1 carry for 47 yards. Great play call there. Tyler Shough. Credit to Shough, man. You know, it's been pretty much known that he's not going to put his body at risk much. But when Louisville needed that touchdown to answer Clemson, he did the flip in the end zone to score. And it might not seem like much, 3 carries for 9 yards and a touchdown, but that play was huge in terms of momentum. So you want to hear something pretty interesting? No sacks given up by the Louisville offensive line. It's been a banged-up offensive line. I know that Clemson fans were pretty upset over the way that Louisville was blocking with I don't even know the term, if you want to call it a cut block, is what I've seen it coined as. But from what the rules analysts called it on TV, is that it's a legal block. So, again, I don't want to overlook the injuries to the Clemson defensive linemen. Like, I want to wish them the best of luck in recovery. I'm not sure if those injuries came on those types of blocks, but Louisville got creative in how they were trying to subdue this really good Clemson interior defensive line. They gave up 0 sacks. Did you think to yourself coming into this game that Louisville's offensive line was going to be able to set the tone? Tyler Shough didn't really get pressured all that much. So overall, I mean, the offense did what they needed to do. They got 33 points up on the board. I mean, I guess Brock Travelstead had almost the majority of that. But they did what they needed to do. They moved the ball when they needed to. One thing that I mentioned, you can't have empty possessions. You have to score in some capacity. And even though field goals aren't the most popular, getting those field goals definitely were able to, push the lead out to what it was. So overall, final thoughts on this win. It was a complete team win. Everyone did what they needed to do. You didn't have a situation to where you shot yourselves in the foot a ton. And also, not a terrible first quarter. I know we're down 7-3 going into the second quarter, but it wasn't a terrible first quarter. Like, there wasn't a huge hole to dig yourself out of. And once they got the lead on the Tyler Shough touchdown, they didn't look back. I credit Louisville's resiliency. I credit the game plan coming in on both sides of the football. Ron English called probably his second best game as the Louisville defensive coordinator, minus that. I say that. I won't go as far as saying that because he had the shutout last year against Duke, the game against Virginia Tech, the game against NC State last year. The best game plan this season, hands down, without a doubt. Credit to Ron English. Jeff Brom, once again, opening up the playbook. Credit to the offense. Isaac Brown, phenomenal. Offensive line, great. Defense, all across the board, fantastic. Special teams, electric. On the next episode of the show, we're going to talk about what's next. Louisville just got this statement victory. The spark that this team needed. Well, I guess the last thing we'll say, we'll kind of discuss this one point. One thing that I mentioned when Louisville beat Boston College last week, even though it was a team that they were supposed to beat by all means, being able to come back down 17 points with about 8 minutes remaining in the third quarter, I felt like just doing that might have been a weird way of waking this team up. It seemed like this team was at a crossroads, that, there was questions as to whether or not the team was going to quit because it looked like they were going down a really tough path. And then all of a sudden, you were able to come back, get the victory, build the morale up, build the momentum up. And it's very clear that carried into this victory against Clemson. So what's next? Louisville 6-3. You might not necessarily prioritize a bowl game as much in the new playoff format, but Louisville is going to a bowl game. But they're not finished yet. There's a chance to really make this season successful. They'll get a chance to heal up. They have a bye week coming up before they head to Stanford on the road to continue and create a winning streak. We'll discuss a little bit more about Isaac Brown's stardom, Ron English's defensive game plan, and what this means for the team and the program with this win. Once again, I want to thank you all for tuning into this live edition of the show. When this gets done posting, you'll be able to rewatch this on YouTube and listen to it on whatever streaming service you utilize. But that is going to wrap up this very impromptu, early Sunday morning live edition episode of the Locked On Louisville podcast. Thanks for tuning in. We'll see you right back here very soon. And most importantly, go Cards.